An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 137. I'm Aaron Pallier.
I'm Darlene.
We are talking about The Mummy's Hand from 1940. Now, this is the second Mummy film from Universal Pictures, but it is not technically a sequel to the first Mummy film with Boris Karloff.
But it uses It uses a bit of the plot.
It uses a bit of plot and stock footage from the first movie. But it's not supposed to be in the same continuity. This is a completely different Mummy.
And it had a budget of $80,000 and went over by $4,000.
Okay, so yeah, it was $84,000, and I actually figured this out. For 1940 in today's money, that's $1.7 million. And again, I think this is where converting money from let's say the 1940s and 50s doesn't really work well to modern day, because this looks far better than a $1.7 million movie.
An
really
asylum
should.
film.
An asylum film is only about 1 million, but this is far better than that. I will also be bold and say that this is arguably better in most regards than the first Mummy film from 1932, right? Or is it, when was it?
It was 32, I believe.
Now we're all looking at our notes here. Oh, my Lord. Yeah, 1932. It is better than the 1932 Mummy in most regards, except for the fact that Boris Karloff is a gem in that first movie.
This is 67 minutes, so it's 7 minutes of an hour.
Yep. Have you seen this one before?
No. I wasn't ever interested in the Mummy movies, except for the new ones.
I don't remember ever seeing this, but I'm sure I have. Again, Mom watching Universal horror movies. That was her thing, where Dad watched flying saucer movies and weird stuff like that. So I'm sure I have seen this, but I can guarantee you I don't remember a damn thing from this. This is all new to me. But I will say there's one thing that should stick out to you that is common in most Mummy films after this. The mummy having a crippled hand and shambling a little bit because of a dummy leg or something like that, a bad leg. That's the first time this happens. I mean, there's a little bit of shambling in the first Mummy movie, but not quite.
And they actually tell you why he's like that, too.
Yeah. Because it was bound up too tightly or something like that.
Oh, well, the priest wasn't giving him enough of the
life juice.
That leaves of the tannin.
Tenor
an extinct, something like that. An extinct plant.
So, since we don't really remember seeing it. I've already said that I think this is better than the first Mummy film. I'm gonna also say there are things that don't work in it, but we'll get to that. We're gonna talk about the plot first, because believe it or not, the plot is different. It is a different movie than the first one. Not quite, but it is different, correct? I'm not talking
Yes, it is different, but it does take the...
So, we have a little bit of weirdness in the sets here. And this is strange to me, watching these Universal films, because usually Universal does a very good job at hiding where they're filming. And the first shots of this movie are clearly props built onto a California hillside. And this is where the credits, it's like the stone steps going up the hillside with weird Egyptian-ish carvings.
Very beginning, you have the priest going to the high priest.
Well, yeah, that's what this is.
And he is on a camel, but it's not a one hump camel.
It's a two-hump camel.
It's a two-humped camel, and he's clearly in the California.
He's clearly in Southern California. It's
with trees and brush.
It is
and
painfully obvious that he's in and don't I say at one point that we do see Vasquez Rocks in this as well?
I don't.
I might have this written down somewhere where I'll go Vasquez Rocks. I thought we saw Vasquez Rocks again.
I don't think this one you had it. But you said the caves are probably Bronson caves.
No.
You said they weren't?
No, they weren't. They did not look like Bronson caves to me. The only thing that I thought it looked like was it was clearly Southern California. Other than that, I can't really tell. Now, it is also, we actually have a date for once in one of these films. A very firm date. This is taking place, and it was also filmed in May of 1940. This will come into play with the third Mummy film, because then it all gets screwed up, because I already know all about that. Because the third Mummy film takes place 30 years after this, but it's only filmed like the year after, and they make no mention of the fact that it's supposed to be the future. There's no bell bottoms, there's no, anything like that. There's no disco. It's just 1940, but they say it happened 30 years earlier, which contradicts all the stuff that we see in this film, because the 1940 date comes up many times in this film with stuff in the background. Anyway, we have a guy going out. Actually, we're told at first that there's a man who defiled the temple, who tried to make himself and a priestess immortal and defied Isis.
And this is where the stock footage was used.
From the first film, yep. And he is cursed with immortality for his sins against Isis.
And buried, mummified, and buried alive.
Okay. So,
but the priests are keeping him alive with this
magic juice, life
juice of this tantan leaf.
Yeah.
And only giving him a drop or two every full moon.
Yes, because he actually does need this to stay alive. Like, we learn, and I'm talking a little bit about out of sequence here with the plot, but we do learn that there is a priesthood that has kept the faith all the way since ancient Egypt for like 4,000 years. They have been giving this mummy like a couple drops of this life juice just to keep his pulse going. And that it is explained that if they give him 9 drops,
9 leaves
worth of this juice,
it will restore his movement.
It'll restore his movement, and he'll go around and follow your orders or seek out more. But if he gets more than 9, he'll become an unstoppable monster. Darlene, does he get more than 9 leaves worth of juice in this movie?
Yes.
Yeah, like 40 or 50, and he does not become an unstoppable monster. Anyway, there are a couple Americans in this that are getting off a train in Cairo. But we are introduced to this old priest who is giving over his priesthood and explaining all of this to his son. His son's played by George Zucco, who we immediately recognize from a review that we've done recently called The Flying Serpent from 1946. He was the archaeologist in that. He is much better in this film. He's fantastic. This is 6 years before Flying Serpent. This film's he's very good in this. Anyway, we get the whole explanation about how this juice works. And we have these 2 Americans that are now in Cairo, and it's Steve Banning and Babe Jensen. Now, this is this is an Abbott and Costello relationship. This is Abbott and Costello without being Abbott and Costello. Because you have the tall, thin guy who's the straight man in this, and you have the kind of chubby, bumbling guy who's the comic relief. This is Abbott and Costello.
It's not done. It doesn't fit.
The comedy does not fit, but, okay, it does not fit with the rest of the plot. But is it charming at times? Yes. I think it does work, just not with the rest of the plot. So, it turns out that they were on an archaeological team here, and they were let go because they were effectively incompetent. and had their theories disproven multiple times. I don't think Babe was an archaeologist. I think Babe was just there along for the ride because Steve Banning was the archaeologist. And he's told that he can maybe come back to New York and get a job in the bone cleaning room. Like, that's how kind of disgraced he is after having multiple of his theories like disproven. Okay. He ends up finding this broken vase in
the bazaar.
In a bazaar, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is it. I have a line on being able to find this new tomb of this priestess. Let's see if we can go get funding." And they go to the Cairo Museum, and we're introduced to George Zucco playing Andoheb, who is the son of the high priest, who has now become the high priest because his father died after giving him a medallion. And he poo-poos this entire thing. He's like, "Nope, you're completely wrong. This vase has nothing to do with any kind of reality. It's a fake, etc., etc." Because that's the tomb that they are protecting. Okay? And I guess it is true that these kinds of pieces of, base or broken pottery are found every now and then that refer to this priestess's tomb, and they have to cover it up.
Because when they get there to the place, there is some information of a previous expedition.
Well, okay, so what this guy says basically is, don't go there. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money, but you're also going to risk your life because no expedition has returned from this Valley of the Seven Jackals. I think that's what he calls it. And Steve and Babe end up like being really dejected and go to a bar to drink their worries away. Well, it turns out Babe is a very, very amateur magician. Like, he does sleight of hand stuff and card tricks. And he's been scamming people all over Cairo out of drinks, basically, by guessing their cards out of a card deck. And he ends up encountering a magician named Mr. Silvani.
Somebody that is really good at...
And he doesn't realize that this guy's a magician. And this magician screws with him mercilessly.
And Steve tries to warn him.
Yeah. And it actually is cute. Because the magician, Mr. Silvani, is honestly having a really fun time screwing with this guy. Because Babe isn't very competent at being a magician, and Silvani really is actually a very good stage magician. So all this sleight of hand stuff, he's like stealing Babe's wallet. He has like his watch off his wrist, and he just keeps like pulling stuff out of his own coat that is like Babe's. And Babe can't understand what the hell's going on. And it actually is cute. All right. So anyway, they end up sitting down with him, and he listens to them talk about this piece of pottery and how it actually is.
And all three of them get drunk.
All three of them get wasted drunk. And Silvani, who actually has a little bit of money left, promises to fund an expedition out to the Valley of the Seven Jackals, which is certain death. $2,000. I mean, that's a good amount of money. What is that? That's about 40 grand today. I mean, that's not an expedition into the middle of the desert of Egypt, but $40,000 in today's money. So this guy just has 40 grand in cash in his pockets, effectively.
Well, because everybody takes off, you don't ever even need to pay the doggone diggers on how they took off.
They all ran, yeah. So anyway, it turns out that he has a daughter named Marta, who's played by Peggy Moran. Peggy Moran has a very strange career. She basically worked only for Universal from 1938 to 1943 and effectively just did 20 movies a year. Like, that's what it came across as. Like, one of her quotes is, "I'd get done with one movie and just go over to the next building and start filming the next." Like, that's all she did. And is she a good actress in this? Yeah, I think she actually is. And she has a really cute costume. She, as the daughter, like, Marta was expecting to leave that night to get on a ship. She has all of their bags packed, and she's actually in this kind of cute outfit. She's clearly the magician's assistant, his daughter, because she has this like white dress that has stars and moons on it, but she's kind of like hiding it underneath a trench coat and a really kind of fine hat. She is shocked that her father is piss drunk and has given away all of their money. And she's like, nope, I'm going to go and get our money back because you've been swindled.
You've been swindled, yes.
So she goes and finds Steve and Babe. And she is probably the best magician of this movie because she demands their money back and pulls a gun on Steve. And it's a 6-shooter, and she fires 10 rounds from it into a shape of a heart on the door. And I'm like, that's hardcore.
And there were smaller bullets than what would have came out of the. Yeah, because that barrel was. It was
a dirty, hairy looking gun.
Yes, and it made things that looked like
the magic is 10 shots from a 6-shooter. That's
10
the magic.
magics from a 6-shooter, and having it being BB guns and BB pellets instead of.
But they were both very impressed with this feat of. I don't know. It truly is magic. They were both impressed, and they sit down with her. I guess she's just like, okay, I've shot my wad. I'm done. Like, there's people freaking out in the hotel. Like, you can hear people screaming and like calling for police. And Steve just kind of calmly sits her down. And she's fine. She's like, I just don't want my father swindled. And he's like, sweetie, we're not swindling your father. Here's the piece of pottery. We really are on the track of this tomb.
And then she demands to be on the trip too,
to make sure that her father isn't swindled. Okay, no, fair enough. She's her father's assistant. I get it. She clearly cares about her father and has no regard for human life at all. Because remember, Babe was on the other side of that door and had to dodge out of the way of bullets.
No, Babe was the one.
There was somebody on the other. It was Steve.
That was Steve. That was shaving.
No regard for human life. That's all I have to say. Those bullets went straight through the door and out the other side. She's like, screw you. The only human being I care about is my father. All the rest of you can die. Okay, so anyway. Where am I? Blah, 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 blah. Well, we're going to go out into the desert, okay? We're going to go out into the desert. And they begin to dig, and they start finding... Oh, they have a professor that is also with them. His name is Professor Petrie. Because I remember Petri dish. That's how I remembered it. He's helping them because he actually believes that this is also real. He works for the Cairo Museum. They're out there digging, like, immediately. And they end up starting to find coins and trinkets, but nothing that really suggests a priestess's tomb. All right. So they end up, the first thing they really discover that's important are the bodies of one of the previous expedition. They end up finding like portraits, like some things that people would have kept in their wallet. Like little
they
pictures.
Found a locket that had the two people's pictures in it.
And they find skeletons, and they're like, oh shit, this isn't good. This isn't good. And Babe is playing with dynamite, as one does in the 1940s, and almost blows everybody up. But in doing so, collapses a cliff face, and they find a cartouche that is...
The 7 Jackals.
And they're like, oh, this is it. Here's the seal. We can get into this tomb, and the workers say that it's an evil tomb. They're not going to go in there. Screw you guys.
And everybody runs out.
Everybody runs out.
Except for the main main person in charge of the dig.
Yeah. So everybody goes in that's left, and they find a sarcophagus that's open and a casket that isn't sealed. They're like, that's interesting. We had to like unseal this cave. It was sealed. Why is this open? They didn't bury him properly. And they assume that it's the princess's tomb. But they open it, and it's clearly a man.
Yeah, and they have that discussion.
And it's actually a cheap coffin, and it turns out that his name is Cadiz. I think it's Cadiz.
Charis.
Right.
I had to look it up.
And he was buried alive. And his like flesh still feels lifelike. It's actually very good makeup too. Very good makeup. Just like Boris
that was a
Karloff's
neat
was.
conversation between Steve and Dr.
Petrie.
That
he like very good embalming.
And they found those leaves.
Okay, yeah, the wacky.
And the guy said these have been extinct but it was used for mummifying, and we don't know how to use
them. There's no real records. Yeah. So the diggers run away out of fear of death in this valley, and we have Andoheb, who is now the high priest. He ends up showing up with Dr. Petrie in the cave, and Dr. Petrie's like, I thought you didn't believe any of this. And he's like, no, I just told you that so you wouldn't come out here, because now I'm going to have to kill you. And he doesn't really do the villain monologuing. He just like has the mummy kill him.
Strangle him.
Yeah, by like feeding the mummy the life juice. Mummy gets up, strangles Dr. Petrie. Dr. Petrie is dead. Like that's he doesn't really monologue at all. The high priest commands one of the workers to place a vial of this leaf fluid in the American's tent.
No, that's that's not one of the workers. It's the beggar that was on the street.
He's
in part the bazaar.
He's part of the cult.
He's part of the cult.
And so he puts it in there. Okay, so he puts it in there. But like one of the loyal workers notices somebody screwing around inside the American's tent. And good for this guy for checking it out, honestly. And he goes in there and finds the vial, picks up the vial, and the mummy comes in and strangles him to drink the vial.
And he's the last of the Egyptians that
have stayed behind. Which is, I mean, good for him. And he was, doing his job guarding the dig site. So the Americans end up thinking that the princess's tomb is attached to this one, and they have to find the connection. And another, I already said the worker dies by finding the vial. The mummy comes into the magician's tent later that night, and the daughter screams because there's like a vial somewhere in there.
So at this point, he's had 3 vials.
He's had far more than what it would take to turn him into an unstoppable monster. The magician isn't actually killed here, Mr. Silvani, because the daughter screams and the mummy, like, I guess has lust or something and grabs her. Instead, she faints. And I guess fair enough. There's an old dusty mummy coming into your tent in the middle of the night. That can be kind of scary. I guess I get it, right? He grabs her, walks off. He is able to survive. Mr. Silvani survives. So the mummy brings Marta to this temple, and that's where the high priestess's tomb is, even though we never see the high priestess here. It's hinted at later on that they do find her, though, because of the telegram that comes in for Stephen and Babe. Anyway, the high priest says that he will make them both immortal, that he has the power to do this, and that she will become his new high priestess. Okay, so this is like a lust angle from the high priest that kind of came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would he be doing this?
But it explains why the mummy actually picked her up and
because he like ordered him to bring her back or something. That's fair enough. But Babe gets in because he's actually able to find the normal entrance to the priestess's burial cave, and ends up just blowing away the high priest on the steps of the temple.
After Steve shoots the mummy about.
No, this is before Steve shoots the mummy. Yeah, he guns the high priest down. High priest falls down
the priest
the step.
doesn't think he's going to shoot.
Babe just like unloads his entire revolver into him. Okay, good for you, Babe. Now then, inside, you have Marta chained to an altar. The mummy's coming in. Steve ends up firing his revolver into the mummy. The mummy doesn't care. He gets Steve gets knocked away, and the mummy's going for like the big pot of life juice
that's on a burner.
And Babe blows the fluid out of the mummy's hand. It breaks on the ground. The mummy like drops to the ground to like lick it up, basically. And then Steve grabs this brazier that has fire in it and throws it onto the mummy. And I guess the life juice is made out of kerosene.
Yes.
But
that was my joke.
But I said, no, you know what? The Mummy's wrappings are probably pretty flammable. Let's be honest. And he's kind of dry.
Yes,
dusty.
but it's the liquid that's on fire when they show the picture.
Sure. So it flares up. Mummy, I guess, is dead. We go to that scene in Cairo where they get the telegram. They're clearly well off. You have the magician, Mr. Silvani, Marta Silvani, Steve, and Babe. They're all in like new clothes that look a lot better than the ones that they had originally at the beginning of the movie. And they're going back to the United States, and they get the telegram saying for Steve that Steve gets like the directorship job.
I think it was Dr. Pater's position.
Yeah, because it's the guy that like discounted his theories originally from America, from the Natural History Museum in New York. And Steve's like, haha, I get his job. And I think it was supposed to be, somewhat sarcastic that he's obviously not getting that job, but it's more like, hey, you earned a job back in the United States. The end. Okay. It's not a super complex plot. It's not super complex, but
it does use the background, the Egyptian background of a person that tried to bring back somebody using these special leaves and gets mummified alive.
Yeah. So, I mean, they reuse some of the stuff from the first Mummy movie. The plot's simple, but I like the new sets that they built. Like that set that they have at the priestess's tomb is fantastic.
I don't like the fact that they the environment outside of it. You can see
it's Southern California.
It's Southern California trees and shrubbery.
That does feel a little cheap. I will agree, but it's better than filming it all on sets. I will say that. Because it has a different feeling. Like if you look back at the first Mummy film or Frankenstein, all the outdoor stuff is on sets. It's just filmed in such a way as to make it look outside.
Well, at that time, the sets of the Eastern European was always kept there.
Yeah. It still is there, supposedly. If we ever go to Hollywood, we can go to Universal Studios and see some of these old sets, which I would like to do one of those times that we do go out west. It's more, Universal Studios has more than just Hill Valley sitting in it, which of course would be something I want to see. But anyway,
but that Eastern Village is just a regular set that they have.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the things that I will say work in this, I think overall, the acting asterisk is pretty good in this movie. And my asterisk is Babe is annoying with his comedy. But like all the other acting, I think is fine. I think it works. It works well.
Yeah, he didn't do a good job of being a comic relief.
I think
it just, every time he came on and was doing, not when he like bumbled about shooting the priest. He kind of had the joke there too. But the whole bar scene, there's also a fight that takes place because the cult
yes
does a fight, and there's all the bumbling.
Yes, I think out of all the actors, though, let's be honest, George Zucco as the High Priest did a pretty good job.
They even did Kirklight on him.
Yeah, they did do a Kirklight on him. When I even remarked on that, I yelled Kirklight, and you're like, yeah, and it actually was dramatic looking, wasn't it? I mean, again, they've done that before in many of their movies. We saw Kirklight on Boris Karloff in the first Mummy movie. His eyes, remember his eyes? Those are going to stick with you, right? From that first movie.
Well, this one actually had eyes that were glowing at one point.
They seemed like it. No, you're thinking about the Mummy, the original Mummy with Boris Karloff's eyes.
Because this person had real eyes behind that.
Yeah,
that was real person, but they might have put something around it that made the light just shine because it was like right here.
Sure. Yeah.
Not the actual eyes, but right above
something that made it look like. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's possible. I will say I think Boris Karloff looked better as the Mummy, but I think the makeup in this is fantastic and works. Okay, I think the sets work. Like especially they underuse that priestess's tomb.
You liked
set.
all the girls' clothing.
I thought it was simple and different. It was different, mainly because it wasn't overly glamorous. It looked like a woman who had costumes that she was trying to make work as everyday clothes because she didn't have money for everyday clothes.
As well as the costumes.
Exactly.
Because
So-
you get that opinion on her father, too, because
Yep.
when he was in the bar, he's wearing velvet, black velvet.
Yeah. He's wearing his stage costume. And even out in the desert, he's wearing what looks to be costume style clothing. They are clearly not well off, right? I think the only reason Steve and Babe actually have appropriate clothing all the time is that they used to be on these expeditions and actually have this stuff kind of stored up. With Marta, you see, and I think it was a really nice touch that even out in the desert, the dress bottom is the one that has the stars and moons on it from her magician routine. Like the only time you really get a good view of that stars and moons dress is right at the beginning when her father comes in drunk as a skunk and she says, "No, I'm going to go find these bastards and get our money back." She is clearly wearing her costume underneath her trench coat.
Yeah, and it looks like polka dots.
It looks like polka dots, but it's not.
And when she's at the campsite. And that was a real fire, too, by the way.
Yeah. So I thought it was a nice touch to show, and I'm sure that people watching this at the time would have picked that up, that these two aren't prepared for this. They don't have money to just waste. They were on their way back to the United States, and yeah, they have tons of crates, but I guarantee you that's all magician's gear.
That's all magician's gear, because
Yeah.
she locks her father in
In a trunk.
To
keep him there while he's drunk as a skunk. Yeah, like what I think is
that was cute and comedy,
and it
but
worked.
it fit
Yeah,
in it.
Yeah, it worked.
Where
It worked
some of
really
the
well.
stuff from Babe doesn't.
And see, here's another thing that works with this whole comedy magician thing. Because remember, when she unloads that gun into the door, she shoots a heart into the door. Because, and they say, I think it's Steve that goes, "That's some amazing shooting." And she says, "I've been doing this for a living for years." And okay.
Something like since she was 8 or
Yeah,
something like
okay,
that.
no, that's funny. She's a crack shot because she does this for a living. Like, okay, Annie Oakley, that's awesome.
One of the things that was kind of an interesting thing is that the magician was trying to teach Babe I think it was a strawberry, wasn't it?
Like how to
Or a
like palm
rock.
things and make things pop out of people's ears, and yeah, and he's like halfway like choking.
He was
on
choking on it, and Steve thinks
the mummy's choking him out or something. 'Cause he's like,
choking
he has to run out. Yeah. There's lots of cute things in this with comedy that doesn't work some of the time, but when it's the magicians and Marta doing it, it tends to actually work really well.
well, when it's
Babe doing it, no.
when it feels like it's not forced on you, it's just there.
Can I say my one disappointment with the works thing for the rest of the movie? Okay, Marta. Here's a woman who has put up with a whole bunch of shit, right? Her drunk father, being sent to Egypt with him for a show in a crummy freaking cabaret. She is a crack shot. She is bold and brave enough to go hunt down two men who she thinks are criminal scum.
Night.
In the middle of the night, she goes and hunts them down to get the money back. This is a brave, brave woman, right? This is what is set up. And she faints twice. And she never uses that crack shot crap later on. And I thought they set it up for that. Like, that maybe she's the one that shoots out. She should have been the one that shoots out that
priest.
The priest or the brazier at the end to break the vial of life juice. Right? That would have been amazing. See, I'm saying they did this really good setup. It works, but
That
then
would have been something that would have been
a little bit.
that would have been something that they would have done to today's mummy. but not in 1940.
Yes, but if you're setting up Babe as the comic relief, which they did, it would have made sense for her to be the straight man to her father's comedy, and Steve being the straight man to Babe's comedy. That Steve and Marta are the two like straight people in this. That they're the straight
The
shooter.
intelligent.
Yeah, they're the intelligent. They're the rational, level-headed ones that are the ones that are getting everything done. Whereas what it ends up being is it's just Steve. If this was made in the 1950s, I think it would have been made that way.
She's the one that came up with the idea that the female's priestess tomb is behind this one.
Yeah, it's somehow connected. I mean, she comes across as smart, level-headed, brave as all hell, and bold.
And don't take any crap from anyone.
Yes, but then she just faints at the end. Like,
yes, but that's something, and then screams.
I'm just saying that, like,
I can see her screaming because
this is a really cool setup for 1940. The setup alone is pretty cool with her. I think, like, wow, that's a very strong female lead, and I'm putting lead because I don't really think she comes across as a lead in this. It's pretty much Steve and Babe all the way through this as the leads.
And then the villain is the
third lead, so to speak. Like, I don't think
is the priest and the mummy.
Peggy, who plays Marta, actually gets second bill in this, and I think she should have actually had a bigger role to play in it. It would have made sense. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm just adding on to this is really good. They did this really good setup, but then they kind of dropped the ball later on. I'm still giving a credit where credit's due with that. Do you have anything that you feel really works beyond the couple things that I've said, like the acting, the sets, the setup with the costumes and things like that?
Would you recommend this?
Well, we haven't even talked about what doesn't really work yet either. But I'm trying to say, do you have anything to add?
I've said what I need.
What didn't work, Darlene?
I already said that too. Sometimes the comedy is basically crammed down your throat, not.
Yes, I think that didn't work. Specifically, I think some of the outdoor shots don't work. I think that Peggy Moraine is wasted a bit in this. She is clearly a good actress, and she had a short career, even though she has lots of movies under her belt. She had a short career. I think she actually is a decent actress. In that 1940s kind of wink and a nod sort of way. Excuse me. Sorry. Allergies. It's becoming allergy season.
It's always allergy season with you.
I know it is. It seems to be. Other than that, I don't
understand the name of the movie, though. You said
it's about the mummy strangling people. The mummy uses his hand to strangle people, like the mummy's hand. His hand is coming for you.
It would make me think that it's detached.
Oh, which would have been cool too. Like maybe his hand gets detached and he's able to control it with his mind and acts like thing.
See, that's what my thought of the Mummy's hand was, but it didn't.
That would have been cool too. So would I recommend this? Yeah, I would. I think I would recommend it more than The Mummy for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit better than The Mummy.
Boris Karloff is a national treasure. I love Boris Karloff in the first Mummy movie, but for sure, I think this is a more entertaining movie. I don't think it's as high of quality.
It isn't high quality, but it is
more entertaining.
It's not dead.
It's more engaging. Maybe that's the way I should say. Because with The Mummy, there are big chunks of it where you don't really feel attached to the movie, where it feels like it sort of ambles and you feel lost from its path. Whereas in this, even though there's some really aggravating shit with Babe and his dumbass comedy, you're engaged with it at the very least, right? Like I really felt like I was in the movie for parts of it. My
first part of the movie, though, when they started saying that, I was like, oh God, it's just the same movie over. And I think it took me a bit. I also was very tired too.
Yeah. It took you a bit to get into it. And then you realize, nope, this is a completely different movie. they're just trying to set up certain things that are using some of the footage that they used from the original Mummy for cost-saving purposes, which totally okay with.
Unlike a book, you need to get to the 15-minute marker on this before just turning it off, because if you don't, you're going to turn it off.
See,
I would have turned it off.
I was still engaged with it. Mainly because of the weird old high priest kind of thing. I mean, yeah, they were still they totally used the view screen just like they did in the Mummy. You know, the view screen scrying pool.
Yes.
It was Sulu, bring that up.
Yeah, I did not want to bring that one up.
That was good. Yeah, I recommend it. Do you recommend it? Yeah.
Yeah, right? I can if you want to watch one, yeah.
I think
but it's not high.
I would say it's like 6.5 out of 10 if I had to give like a rating to it. Like,
I'd say it's average.
You say it's 5 out of 10?
Yeah.
But just slightly above because you are recommending it.
Yeah.
So it's 5.5 out of 10, maybe.
Yeah.
Just slightly higher then. Because, I mean, like we've said before, we don't really want to fence sit on this. On this show, we don't want to fence it. We can say if it's very close, but we'll
like
go
I
one
said,
way or
if
the
you're
other.
bored with it in the first 10 minutes, don't just forward it a bit.
Yeah, just go ahead.
I felt like the first.
It was repeating a lot.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like. Even though it wasn't, there was new footage interspersed in that flashback scene. Because did you notice that they had taken out Boris Karloff and put in the new actor?
Yes,
who was Tom Tyler as the Mummy. So they actually did shoot new things and actually do things slightly differently. It wasn't like they were just refilming the same shots.
No, but it just felt like
it was weird. At
that first part, it just felt like the bazaar was. I just wanted to hit Babe, smack him in the face.
Can I also?
I did like the scene where she's in it with the thing, and that's about where she's yelling at her dad about losing the $2,000.
That was a great scene.
From there on, it was okay.
It was that was a good scene. Every scene with her really talking and interacting with people, especially when it's just with her dad. Like, you can tell that this character could have just been slightly tweaked and been made really memorable, very memorable. What was I going to say? I think part of the problem you have with that first 15 minutes is that since we only watched The Mummy very recently, I'll say, because I don't remember how long ago it was that we watched The Mummy.
It was back 2
episodes. 2 episodes, but how long in real life since we watched it? Maybe a week and a half?
I don't write dates down when we...
Because we tend to tape more than 1 episode a week. Let's put it that way. Anyway.
All we have between it is the Valley of the Dragons.
Valley of the Dragons. Okay, so the only reason I think you're connecting it so much with that first Mummy movie is that we watched it very recently. If we would have had even a year between The Mummy and Mummy's Hand, you probably wouldn't have felt that way.
I'd still be mad about the name of the movie.
Sure, but I'm talking about how you felt that there was some repetition in the first 10, 15 minutes. You probably wouldn't have had a problem at all with that.
I don't know. I might have.
Anyway, I thought it was good. It was better in some ways than the original Mummy, except for Boris Karloff, because Boris Karloff is amazing. We do recommend it. It's a light recommendation from Darlene. It's a recommendation from me. But I don't know. We'll do another sci-fi from the 50s or 60s for the next episode, and then probably jump back to Mummy movies. I don't know. It all depends. We have tons of Universal stuff to watch and go through. So
we still got Dr. X.
We do need to do Dr. X, and I'm thinking we should do Dr. X for
140.
140. Yeah, maybe. So I'm Aaron.
And I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.